Alright, hello everyone and welcome to this video. For this one, I wanted to kind of talk about Spengler and kind of um, highlight some main ideas, in particular one about the province. But before I can do that, there has been some people who have given me some feedback, and so I am going to take a small step back just for a couple minutes for the audience's sake to kind of explain a very, very unjust explanation to kind of set the stage for the video. I would highly recommend looking into the decline of the West yourself, or looking at people like John David Ebert's videos on it. But anyway, for myself, just to do this, I'll say that Spengler offers us up this Copernican model, these 9 high-class civilizations. Each of these civilizations have their own relationship with their own history. Like the Egyptians, for example, loved to record everything. The classical was pretty forgetful in that anything that happened prior to him kind of just wasn't interesting. So he only remembered really what he thought was important. And the Indian history being totally forgotten. Nobody wrote any of that down. It was all draped in anonymity and so forth. And so if we wanted to use this Spengler filter of understanding that history itself is kind of this living organism that has a kind of, well, quite literally a fatalistic kind of approach to it, and that just like how it has its own, each civilization has its own values, its own maths and art, they will also have its own decline, and it'll be timely because ultimately, just like all living creatures, there's a decline. So he kind of paints this, kind of fleshes this out by putting it with culture and civilization, and just as the culture rises and self-actualizes, and those people become who they actually are, and usually they win their whatever struggle was for that civilization at the time. They rise up, and just as they rise up and conquer whatever it is that they were set to conquer, the culture ultimately loses its way and becomes civilizations, which is ultimately the product of the culture. The civilization comes and becomes kind of this almost de-worldly thing compared to the province that kind of set the foundation for that kind of world state. And so I kind of beat around very, very, very roughly in only 2 minutes there to kind of get to the concept of the world city. And so the world city is obviously where you have a central hub. Usually you would associate it with the geography of a water source, is how I was always taught it. But obviously it would be a place where you would have commerce and markets and economics and stuff like that, because civilization that's one of the symptoms of a civilization in and of itself, is the rise of these moneyed interests, and money becoming the kind of intrinsic value to how life is evaluated, quite literally. And everything kind of has this almost price value approach to being, that you value how much money is worth in this hour that I'm spending on such and such, and kind of just wage disputes and issues like that. So this obviously is a huge step away from how anyone else from the outside of this kind of realm would see history everyone else kind of sees it in the three-step way, the ancient, medieval, and modern. And so to us, it misses the point, and understanding that like history is not like this linear project like everyone else in our contemporaries would see it. Because obviously if you see it in that context, then the West, funny enough, kind of becomes this Eurocentric way of thinking that I've actually talked about in the last two videos intentionally, kind of like the Anglo and empiricism and all of these concepts with science and things like that. But so to kind of get to the meat of this video, I guess, and get off the backdrop, I wanted to talk about what it means to like kind of be this province people in this time. I think that's like one of the values to take away from the decline of the West. Obviously where I'm located, I would be included in that, and I see this all the time. This is like one of the things that makes Spengler so influential, I think, right now, is like, despite the fact that this text, Decline of the West, was, you know, written in the between like 1914 and 1918. I think that was like when it was published, if I'm not mistaken. How despite this, it still all applies. Like, you can definitely see this kind of civilization people versus like outside province people kind of conflict, despite the fact that I talk about high-low versus middle all the time. I think that actually is draped in that as well. And so I think I just wanted to kind of brush up on what to take in with how here lately you can kind of see, as certainly in the last year, in this kind of like accelerated state with the political situation and the crisis ongoing, where I think the concepts of like community, if you want to kind of take like a Heideggerian look at it, as we've kind of once again like gone down another path of communication, this time with like the internet, and now like kind of the rise of like Uber Eats, where like now you can just like kind of click on a screen and you know, you just get food delivered straight to your house. How depersonalized that makes it, and what that means for like a community that continues to kind of go down this antisocial, like technocratic route, which you know, someone like us, we would have actually thought, you know, when social media kind of launched, that we were actually, you know, we had this new and faster way to communicate, but yet we kind of continued to go down this road where our local communities are just in disarray because our technology has you know, evolved to the point where everything is like on a worldly basis, so we have no sense of like locality, to the point where I think you know, we have to still understand though that this text was written you know, over a century ago now, and so understanding that techniques have went a far way since then, and seeing that he probably did not see how fast it would accelerate even more with, you know, something like the internet coming along. And I think that's one of the things I want to like kind of focus on, is how we could go about a kind of like regional political strategy against I guess these like global financial interests, basically to like kind of commune together in a way that we could actually like carve a path to functionality, even to actually like bring it about, like, and not in just kind of like this, I don't know, Heideggerian like mystic kind of poetry, agrarian life, which, I mean, I'm not saying that like that's not a good thing, which you are kind of seeing that a lot lately, is like this interest in like agrarian um, lifestyles, I guess you would say. And but I think what we have to understand though with technology is that we are kind of actually seeing though that the urbanization is making its own decline, like like at least how it's being presented to us right now. Like, I'm kind of looking down a couple miles away from my local mall, and it's totally a shell of its former self when I was a child. Nobody goes there anymore. Nobody does their shopping in that way anymore, even when this pandemic will be long gone. That's never going to happen again. So kind of seeing like the fall of brick and mortar, and seeing like property kind of, what do we do with all this commercial property basically, because now you have the concepts of like people working from home. Like a lot of office spaces I don't think are going to come back either when everything's all said and done. Like, what's the point of really renting a building if you can just communicate everyone in this kind of decentralized way from your own house? And so that's very, very enticing, but at the same time that's going to continue to strain and make our local communities as antisocial as possible. So I guess how are we going to be able to balance as technology continues to deepen? How are we going to actually be able to balance our communities and try to hold them together in an authentic way? And how can we actually use that opportunity to like being able to check in on technology, being able to take part of it in like a depersonalized way that goes beyond like geography? Anyone can take advantage of that. I don't think that that's just like some measure that just can go in like one dimension. Like, I think anyone can take advantage of that. And so it would be kind of interesting to see like maybe communities rising out of kind of this internet culture, and how they could like form communities out of it, and become kind of like these province, like kind of like super people in a way that could counter against this like, well, I think it's even more complicated than that, right? Because the whole content with kind of like the world man that arrives, or like the last liberal, as like a lot of people on the scene would call it, how he arises, it's out of the fact that he has no appreciation and resentment for the regional culture that created the conditions for his rise to begin with. But under technology, like, how do you can't really get away from the fact that everything's kind of like de-worlded, and we kind of all like embrace this kind of like English speaking, like internet, like kind of person that's like tapped into by well over 1 billion people. And so caring about your local municipality, I just don't see it like panning out. And so I just wanted to give some thoughts, and brushed up with a couple of my peers who kind of like to talk to me about politics, and get to kind of flesh out like how I see things through this like Spenglerian lens. But to kind of see if maybe this internet culture that's rising up, and starting to like actually kind of grow into like who adulthood really. Everyone's really young for the most part. Like Gen Z's kind of hitting adulthood really, or starting to get into the thick of things, and the millennials are getting towards midlife, or already in the middle of it anyway. And so eventually they're gonna like kind of inherit this political process, and it's going to be interesting to see, because you can kind of see, as I kind of take a step back and look on like a personal level, like most of my relationships I'm forming now are totally like online orientated. Like I can't remember the last time, I think, yeah, it's been quite a number of years since, the concept of like meeting a romantic interest actually like in the real world is becoming less and less likely, and it's more likely to run into each other like on the internet, which is totally crazy to someone like kind of as this, closing in on 30 pretty quickly, millennial, because we used to just mock people like that, like, whoa, why don't you just like approach that girl and actually talk to her in the real world instead of like DMing her. And so it's kind of funny to see that in like shows like Catfish and stuff like that, rising up. And but yeah, I think it's really interesting to see what it would mean for these kind of province people to be able to use the internet and still and kind of decentralize themselves. And like I said, you can see it in all the, we're seeing it in America with like the California exit, the New York exit. People are decentralizing out of these urban areas, so I don't really know what that means. So yeah, I just wanted to share some thoughts. Thanks for watching. And just to kind of maybe make a little side footnote to end this video, and shared some personal thoughts on like Spengler myself. I wanted to kind of say that I share kind of the same sentiment, I feel like, when a lot of people get into Spengler, and that it's super blackpilling when you first kind of like take in this fatalistic realization that civilization almost kind of has a carbon dated lifespan on it. But you have to understand that like it doesn't just climax, wither, and die. There's potential for rejuvenation. There's potential for the budding of new things, new life, new history even. And ultimately, though, as the Western metaphor that he offered us, and kind of this cultural immune system of the West, we are, by making this video, by trying to actualize as this like province people, we are ultimately taking part in that spirit, and that the Western man knows that it could be all for naught. And I think that actually gives this kind of empowerment when you take in Spengler that I would really recommend people take a part of, where if you actually look at your own politics and your own ambitions, once you take Spengler in and you still find the endurance to still participate, I think you almost become more authentic in well, if you just like believe that it's all for naught, then I think you're more likely to actually go about what you truly believe, because fuck it, why not? Why wouldn't you? As Spengler kind of mentions in these classic quotes that people use, you can't have your honorable death ultimately taken. That's all that you are granted. And so I think that's just a footnote to kind of share why I think in particular Spengler is so revered, not just as like this great historian, but almost like this empowering way that he kind of goes about it too, that I think a lot of people share around here. So I just wanted to also put that footnote in there. Thanks for watching.